Hi everyone, so I'm just going to get right into it. So I think that the first term that I took away as being important this week was definitely social vulnerability. This term is defined as a potential loss, but however, in my own words, I would describe it as communities having multiple stressors that could make situations from a natural disaster a lot worse, such as like social exclusion or having like some sort of abuse or violence that takes place in the community. So that's just like my interpretation of social vulnerability. Um, and going through the articles, another word that I thought was really important and like term for this week's lesson was preparedness. So in my own words, it means like being ready for something that's about to happen. So like for example, if a blizzard is going to happen, like going to the grocery store and making sure that you have plenty of food and water and like buying extra batteries for flashlights, and then making sure you have like extra blankets or even like a first aid kit to get you through the storm. That way like you're just prepared for everything that's about to happen. So those were like the two big terms that I really took away this week that were important. My muddiest point this week, I feel like, was the article that talked about gender and how that is a factor in women being vulnerable to disasters because they are the head of the household. And because they are the head of the household, they have to like stay back and like protect the family. And I wonder, I was looking at the article, it was written in 1996. So I wonder now if the data would be a little bit different because a lot of more men are being like stay-at-home fathers now and like taking care of the family. So I wonder if that statistic has changed. It was just my observation. I just went back to go see what year that article was written in. So 1996 is a little while ago. So I think that like maybe I would be curious to see as to what the data would say now, if that's still a true statement or not. So that was kind of like my muddiest point because that made me like trigger like a thought like, okay, gender equality, like are things different now or are they still like that way? And if I had to lead an in-class discussion on this week's topic, the one thing that I would open up with is the article Riding Out the Storm started out with a really interesting first statement that said, disasters may not discriminate, but they do expose and underscore the inequalities that already exist in the communities they impact. So I think if I were to lead the discussion to the class, I would open up with this to talk about what inequalities people think like communities have that make them more prone to disasters, more vulnerable to a disaster. And I think this would be a good conversation to get started because it would get people thinking about vulnerability and how communities become vulnerable and what are the characteristics of a vulnerable community. And that would help lead into the topic of talking about like how to prepare for a disaster and like if you are in a community where you are experiencing like social vulnerability, how you go about making sure that you are prepared for a natural disaster or any disaster that's going to happen. And I think that's like a huge thing that people do need to talk about is how to build a community that is a vulnerable area in hopes of getting them prepared for a situation. So like the low income areas that might not have the money to go out and buy the food or like go out and make sure that they do have the water or a good shelter during a disaster. So I think that would be a good way to start a class, and I think we will get really good discussion going on. But that's all I have for this week. Thank you very much.